This is Professor Favors with a brief lecture on how to tailor your essay to a specific audience. So the English 1301, 1302 2 year or first year composition sequence requires you to use MLA as a citation referencing style. And so most of your works in English should be more English based, composition based, literature based. However, when you bring in different types of articles that may be or may derive from another discipline like psychology, in the case of the career preparation lectures, you would need to make sure that you know how to tailor your paper and the language that you will create in your paper, the content, to an English audience. That means you are converting what you see in the psychology source and the lingo and the technical knowledge and transforming it into English speak. So, this is the brief lecture on that, preparing the essay for an English audience, and you are converting psychology lingo to English speak. This presentation includes some guidelines for understanding how to convert language from one discipline to the next when preparing an English essay. The base sources were 40 points for Pike and 30 points for Bureau of Labor Statistics required that you convert the information into language suitable for an English essay. The Pike article is a psychology-based document. The Bureau of Labor Statistics source is a government online based source. This means that you're tailoring the language to a specific audience. So, what's included in this presentation? Just simply understanding the difference from psychology to English, looking at Pike's hypothesis and converting it in your particular paper to an English essay thesis, looking at also Pike's use of examines or his examination to an English essay topic sentence, use of Pike's use of supporting evidence, meaning that it may not be supporting evidence in his work, but it would be supporting evidence in your paper. And then MLA formatting first and second mention, your thesis plus reasons as topic sentences, integrating Bureau of Labor Statistics, MLA formatting specifically for indirect sources, and then formatting the works cited entry moving from APA to MLA. So let's look at the difference. So in psychology or sociology or economics or mathematics, you have different ways to uh, present information or present findings or present your research, etc. And then in English, it's much more of a synthesis, analysis of that information. We usually do not have subheadings within an English essay. So if you look at the psychology aspect of this first, the person who is writing the article would be considered a researcher. You may also consider the person a scholar. But when we refer to the person within an English essay, that person is considered an author. Uh, for us, we could still use the words scholar and researcher within an English essay. It's not that big of a deal, but that is our English speak. Then for the psychologist or the sociologist or the biologist, they would uh, they will begin any type of research with the goal of creating a hypothesis. For our paper, their hypothesis would be the thesis and argument or position in our paper, how we represent that particular source within the paper. So whatever their hypothesis is, and the hypothesis could also be the findings as well later. And so is their thesis is our thesis argument and then position. And then you have research questions, which would be our rhetorical questions. Research questions are started initially as a way to either validate or invalidate any claims the particular researcher is maybe bringing into the research. But we would use the terms the term rhetorical questioning as a way to guide our writing of the paper, as well as research as well. And then there is the background research. Background research could be a number of scholarly articles. So if you look at the Pike source, there's a lot of citations and referencing within the actual document. That's why you have to know the difference between when Holland is speaking indirectly and when Pike is speaking, and then using first person I, and then when Pike is referencing other works with the end of a citation. End of a sentence citation. That's what we call parenthetical documentation. So that will be the background research. And when you look at it in Pike's article, those are actually their findings. So every time he references a cited source of any kind, that represents the conclusions that those researchers came to, and Pike is merely referencing them as um, concluded research. And then literary canon is always the canon of works on a particular topic. So if we're looking at a specific period in American literature, then we're going to look at the time period. We're going to look at the major literary contemporaries. We're going to look at any past contemporaries, historical information. We may have to go out of the immediate English discipline and go into history or any sort of health records or anything like that back in the day. And that's what we would um, call the literary canon. And then for psychology, it would be an experiment, whereas in English is essentially outlining. In psychology, it would be human subjects, but in English, we are referring to them as literary figures and readings. The readings of a literary figure has just as much validity as the literary figure, himself or herself. But in human subjects, if you remember in Pike's article, he tells you, or he represents within their report, how many human subjects started out. I think it was like six something, and then it dwindled down to five something, and 500 and something, 543, I think. And so those are the subjects who were surveyed. With human subjects, you have to get approval. A researcher just cannot go into a particular university course and say, I want to survey you. There is a board, a human subjects board at each research institution that the researcher, like Pike, would have to put in an application, explain what he plans to do, back it up with any sort of documents he plans to use, like the survey instruments that you see within the work, the expectation scales, things like that. And there has to be approvals before he can make any sort of determination of which classes he's going to survey or what he's going to do. But literary figures, we don't necessarily have to get direct permission from historical literary figures because, of course, they are no longer alive. But the way that we get permission in English is just by creating the citation and then having adding the works cited page, and that is our way of getting permission. And then in psychology, the researcher is testing hypotheses or one or more or one hypothesis, but in English we are proving a thesis. Okay, for the psychologist, then at the end of his processes, he's going to report findings. So if you look on the, I think it's 802 Pike's article where it reads, "My findings." Uh, that is after he's conducted the full experiment, already done all of the surveys, assessed the data, analyzed the data, and now he's actually ending on what he really believed, that he expected to come to those findings. He just had to test them out. But in English, we are building and sustaining the argument. So we started out with a particular argument, and we are, by the end of the paper, uh, validating that very same argument. And the thing about English is if you are building an argument, claim, counterclaim, evidence, and rebuttal, you have to end on your argument, which is the ultimate rebuttal, that you cannot um, fail to address the counterclaim within the paper. So then, in each of these disciplines, there are different types of processes, but your purpose is to make sure that you convert what you see in the psychology source or the government-based source into English speak, how we reference information within an English paper. So let's look at Pike's hypothesis to Pike's thesis for English. So when you look at his thesis, we're calling it a thesis for his for our paper. But of course, when you look at this thesis, it's actually in psychology conclusions or his findings. So my findings suggest that both psychological and sociological interpretations of Holland's theory are needed to understand students' college expectations and experiences. So we add a citation there. So these are his findings, what we would represent within our paper as a thesis, or the author's position or purpose for writing, or purpose for bringing in the information. So then his topic sentence immediately follows. The present research examines the relationships among students' personality types, their intended majors, and their expectations about college in order to evaluate the relative merits of psychological and sociological interpretations of Holland's theory. Now we are directly quoting this information, so we place it in quotation marks. We are not paraphrasing. We did not use any ellipses or anything like that or brackets, and it's a direct quote. And so then we add a citation. So remember, this is the information that is housed within Pike's work, but we are referencing it as a thesis and then a topic sentence so that we can use our English lens to understand his work. So then he gets into types of supporting evidence, but they are, of course, within the work framed differently, sectioned off with subheaders. But we can look at it and pull from that information that in order for him to support what he's trying to accomplish, he's looking at 6 personality types, 6 model environments, and then expectations. So the 6 personality types refers to the psychological interpretation. The 6 model environments, which are the academic majors, refers to the sociological interpretation of Holland's theory. And then, of course, expectations. So in looking at his supporting evidence, and he goes into personality types, we get the 6 personality types, and you can read the rest of this on your own with the actual article: realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Now I don't necessarily have to place this all in quotation marks because I'm just kind of listing right now. But the figure here that you see is the first component, persons, and that is basically where I got the information in terms of what he is referring to with the psychological interpretation of Holland's theory. So that will be supporting evidence on Pike 802. For the academic major, the sociological aspect of it, the academic major is the model environment. And again, we have the same 6 model environments: realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprise, and conventional on Pike 802 as well. And that's your second component. And then 805, Pike 805 has I think practically the whole page is about expectations. So referencing the parts for English. So remember, we are using an English lens to understand Pike's article. If we were all psychology students, we wouldn't need to do that. We would report it, we would structure it the same way that you basically see in the article. But we cannot bring in those headings and subheadings within an English essay, especially when it is formatted for MLA. We have to have a continuous document. So the author's thesis and topic sentence that we're calling my findings suggest that both psychological and sociological interpretations of Holland's theory are needed to understand students' college expectations and experiences. Those are the three areas that we are looking for when we are pulling evidence from the immediate source. And then the present research examines the relationships among students' personality types, which is your psychological interpretation, their intended majors, which is your sociological interpretation, and their expectations about college in order to evaluate the relative merits of psychological and sociological interpretation of Holland's theory, Pike 802. So remember, whatever his thesis is, any evidence that we pull from the immediate work has to actually support that main thesis. And then the supporting evidence that we will pull will be from the first component, the second component, and then expectations. So let's look at some MLA formatting for first and second mention. Remember, anytime you mention a source the very first time for MLA standard, you need to give or provide full name of author, full titling of work. After that, you can reference the author by last name and then an abbreviated title if necessary. So if we're looking at introducing the Pike article by first mention, and we want to introduce the author's work or the researcher's work by his findings or by his thesis or by his position, then we would have to do so formatting the information for MLA. So again, here's his thesis or his findings. My findings suggest that both psychological and sociological interpretations of Holland's theory are needed to understand students' college expectations and experiences. And so use of findings is psychology speak. Use of report is also psychology speak, but it maintains accuracy for using the source, even in an essay written for an English assignment. So let's look at how we would introduce the author's thesis. And I need to see this in your papers. I need to know that you know what the author's thesis is. So in Gary Pike's article titled Students' Personality Types, Intended Majors, and College Expectations, Further Evidence Concerning Psychological and Sociological Interpretations of Holland's Theory, he reports that both psychological and sociological interpretations of Holland's theory are needed to understand students' college expectations and experiences. So you see at the end, 802, if I reference the author's name at the beginning of the sentence line, I do not have to add his name at the citation. I just need the page number. Also, this is the full name of the author and the full titling of the work, the full title that you see on the source. And then I'm also quoting the author's uh, argument, which is represented as his findings. I want it word for word because this is not your article. You are not the researcher for Pike's article, and we need to know what his findings are. All right, so let's look at a second mention once you have introduced the source appropriately with full name of author, full titling of work using MLA format. Then we want to look at a second mention of the source. So, for instance, when we're looking at Pike's source, and after that, we've looked at where he says my recent findings suggest, and the statement right after that is what we would interpret as a topic sentence within our particular paper. Um, we need to look at the language so that we get a really good understanding. So Pike's topic sentence, the present research examines the relationships among students' personality types, their intended majors, and their expectations about college in order to evaluate the relative merits of psychological and sociological interpretations of Holland's theory. Use of examines within this context is really universal. So you will always see examine in just about every discipline because it's just examination. When we look at Pike's thesis in an English essay, um, there is the use of suggest when you see his findings. My recent findings suggest, but it's typically a word that we might use in English, more than you would see in psychology or any other non literary disciplines, because suggest is sort of what we are suggesting about it is not necessarily concrete. And Pike has the right to use the word suggest because, after all, he conducted the experiment, he did all of the work, he did all of the surveying, and so he's suggesting that there is a relationship um, among personality types, intended majors, and expectations. So we have to be sure to report within our papers, our English papers, appropriately. So, in reporting his findings, he further suggests that there is a relationship among students' personality types, their intended majors, and their expectations about college in order to evaluate the relative merits of psychological and sociological interpretations of Holland's theory, Pike 802. So again, use of suggest is more standard, appropriate English speak. And the reason why I make a case about the use of suggest is because it has sort of like the same tone as alleged. So we're not certain of it, we're not sure of it, whether or not it's going to hold water or be a provable argument. That's why it is always safer for us in English to use suggest. But Pike does reserve the right to use the term. And so then you can reference how he referencing it in his particular article. So let's look at your thesis, and your intended career objective would be your thesis, and then integrating Bureau of Labor Statistics. A sample career objective, and you know I always use accountant. And here's your thesis: becoming an accountant is my intended career objective. And so then you would need to create reasons as topic sentences to frame the discussion and support the thesis statement. Remember, your topic sentences have two goals: they frame the paragraph, and they also support the thesis. So here are your three reasons as topic sentences. Accountants must be detail oriented and accurate with numbers. Accountants tend to work from home and may travel for client business. And accountants are highly analytical. Now you can put this all in the introduction paragraph and then spread the discussion throughout your paper. But this gives you reasons why you are choosing a particular career objective. Um, if you don't know what your reasons are, sometimes you can use some of the reasons that you get from Bureau of Labor Statistics to kind of guide your hand, and that's what we're going to do. So let's look at the first topic sentence. Accountants must be detail oriented and accurate with numbers, and you can take some time to um, create another topic sentence. And this screenshot here is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics after searching accountants and following that process. And remember, important qualities refers to the personality aspect of this discussion, whereas the work environment would refer to, say, like the sociological aspect of this particular this discussion on career preparation. So if we are when you're using Bureau of Labor Statistics, because it is a government-based type document, it's good to write, or it's very safe and sound to write an according to statement. So, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, accountants must pay attention to detail when compiling and examining documents. So, we did a first, whenever you do a first mention again of a new source, it's a full title. If there was an author here, you would write the author. When it's just a second mention, you could reference it by BLS or BLS.gov, because this information derives from a online source. You don't need a page number. But we got this information that is quoted must pay attention to detail when compiling and examining documents, right over here where you see detail oriented in bold. And so when you are thinking about how to create your topic sentences, you may use sort of like information from Bureau of Labor Statistics to kind of guide your hand, and then you turn around and quote it. So then your topic sentence will come will go right on top of this BLS.gov according to statement as sort of like a topic sentence and kind of like a prep sentence for the source. And remember, Bureau of Labor Statistics is worth 30 points. Formatting the in-text citation, moving from APA to MLA. Have non-English source materials that you are integrating into your paper, and there's heavy citation with those source materials, unlike you might see in English. You have to make sure that you know how to cite indirect sources, because you don't know the direct research information based upon that long list of citations you see in the Pike source, but you still have to represent the accuracy of those sources. So you must use MLA for your English essay. For example, you would refer to Pike after quoting or paraphrasing with just the author's name and page number and end with a punctuation mark, as you see here, Pike 802, period. The base source, however, the Pike source uses APA in terms of formatting. So the Pike's article is written for a psychology and possibly a sociology audience. The citation requires the author's name plus comma plus year. So this is how you would create the end of sentence citation for an APA paper, Pike, 2006. You don't need a page number. For an essay formatted for MLA, you must use appropriate citation conventions. So you are using Pike 802 formatting convention. So do not integrate any APA, do not mix up APA and MLA. Your paper is an MLA formatted paper. So when you need to cite indirect sources, and this information comes from Purdue OWL, but you can find this online anywhere. When there are guidelines for how you would need to do that, so let's read it. Sometimes you may have to use an indirect source. An indirect source is a source cited within another source. For such indirect quotations, use quoted in to indicate the source you actually consulted. For example, Ravitch argues that high schools are pressured to act as social service centers, and they don't do that well. So that is quoted material, but that material was quoted in another article. So quoted in Weisman 259. Note that in most cases, a responsible researcher will attempt to find the original source rather than citing an indirect source. Now remember, this quoted in is still formatted in MLA. You don't see a year there. That is Weisman 259, not Weisman 2006. So using quoted in for MLA, here's the Pikes article. And remember, you're going to see many references that Pike makes, like Holland, 1997 here, Smart, Feldman, and Eddington, 2000. Those are APA formatted sources. But when you represent them in your paper, because you don't have access to that information, you could always go to the bibliography of the source of the Pike source and possibly type in the title and still get access to it, and then you read that full work, and then that will give you direct access to that source. But because you don't have that kind of time, and maybe this is not a full interest, then you have to cite it as an indirect source. So how you cite an MLA format, let's look at it. Pike discusses Holland's theory and refers to three components: persons, their environments, and the interactions between persons and their environments. That's all quoted material from the original source, but that information was quoted in Holland 1997. So if you look at the figure over here, background Holland's theory, I'm taking the three components, quoting that information, but I'm substituting, I'm not bringing in Holland, 1997. I'm saying, or I'm telling the reader of your MLA formatted paper that this information that I just quoted is quoted in Holland 1997. Do not add a comma, because MLA does not permit a comma for the, the formatting information. But we have to reference how it was referenced here. So Even though we usually don't use a year within MLA, we have to quote it as if, so that anyone who comes along and reads your paper can still find the information. So this is quoted in Holland 1997. Formatting the works cited entry, moving from APA to MLA. So you are formatting electronic sources in your paper, not the print materials. Even though you received a printed document or you can print documents, it is considered um, electronic material. So we have an APA for how to format an article from an online periodical with a DOI assigned. DOI means digital object identifier. So it's just another way to convert what would be a long website address into a shorter website address. And then MLA, an article in an online scholarly journal. So the Pike article is an online scholarly journal. It's an online periodical. It's just that APA refers to it as an online periodical, while MLA refers to it as an online scholarly journal. So let's look at the APA side first. So how you format for APA when you're bringing in the name, the title of the article, the title of the periodical, volume, page numbers will be completely different from how you would format it in MLA. With APA, you just need the last name spelled out, but the first name is always initial, right? Then there's a comma, and then you still have the same last name of the next author or researcher, and then you just continue on until you get to the end of all of the researchers. Now, if you have a source that has 10 plus, I don't know, 5 plus researchers, it can go very long, or you could always use et al. But for here, we have just 3, and I think this will work. And then this was published in 2006, and the article is Development and Validation of the Active Empathic Listening Scale. And that is the title of the article. And pay attention to this. There are no quotation marks, and major words, except for the very first one, is in lowercase. And then the title of the journal, which is the larger publication where the article is housed, is italicized: Psychology and Marketing. Then you have volume number, issue number, page numbers, and then the DOI. If you look at MLA, it determines whether or not the DOI is necessary, because if you look at the example here, you see the website address. So there wasn't a DOI available. So for all online scholarly journals, provide the author's name, the name of the article in quotation marks, the title of the publication in italics, all volume and issue numbers, and the year of publication. Include a DOI if available, otherwise provide a URL or permalink to help readers locate the source. And so we understand that a URL is the website address. So the article in an online only scholarly journal. MLA requires a page range for articles that appear in scholarly journals. If the journal you are citing appears exclusively in an online format, meaning there is no corresponding print publication that does not make use of page numbers, then indicate the URL or other location information. So you see here in MLA format, you have both names spelled out, Dobie, comma, Nadine, but you don't see the year of publication. And then the title of the article is formatted in quotation marks. And this article then is housed in Social Work and Society, the International Online Only Journal, and that's italicized. And then there's a I think issue number, and then the year of publication, and then as well as the website address or the URL. With MLA, we must add an access date. So whatever date that we access the information is the date that you put on the works cited list. So here's the Pike source. Pay attention to where the author's name is, what the full titling of work. No, just because you see this title in all caps, you do not you do not format it in your paper as all caps. I don't even think you do that even for APA. Regardless, any academic essay, you don't need to format the title in all caps. So you would have to convert titling to just major words receiving capital letters. But research in higher education at the very top is the name of the journal. The journal article is students' personality types, intended majors, and college expectations, and all the information after that. So that's going to be formatted in quotation marks. But the research in higher education is the name of the journal publisher, and that's going to be italicized. And then you see volume number, issue number, the year of publication. You don't need November, and then the DOI number. So that's just a quick figure. So let's look at it with APA. If we were going to format it for APA, same Pike source figure, and then let's look at APA formatting. So Pike, comma G, period, year of publication, and all major, except for the first letter and then the letter after the colon, all other letters are in lowercase. And then you skip down to research in higher education, which is italicized, volume number, issue number, page numbers, and then all you need is the DOI information. APA for Pike. So here's just a quick recap, same guidelines, and you see here that we have met those same guidelines. So let's look at MLA with the DOI. And if you look at the DOI in the main source, and it should be a downloadable document into a Word doc, you should be able to copy and paste what you see here. But I was able to find it online through a weird kind of search, and then I put that there. So in terms of formatting the works cited entry, remember with Pike, comma Gary, you're spelling out the names. You do not need your publication like you would do APA. And then all major letters of the words are capitalized. And then you see research in higher education still italicized, but you're spelling out volume 6, well, not spelling out, but VOL period 6, comma NO period 7. Then there's the year of publication there in 2006. And then there is the DOI and the access date. So I did this presentation for recent, so 09. And so that's access 09, February 2023, period. So here's a recap based upon the guidelines for how you would format that works cited. And then here's a side-by-side comparison. So this is MLA. So for APA, the works cited actually would be references. For MLA, then it will be works cited. So again, when you are formatting for APA, and remember, you are not formatting your paper for APA. This is just a demonstration document. So Pike, comma G, 2006 in parentheses, the year, and then all major letters are lowercase except for the first one and then the one right after the colon. And then, of course, research in higher education and information after that, and then the DOI. MLA style, works cited page. And again, make sure that you format your papers for works for MLA. So we have Pike, comma Gary. There's no year there. In quotation marks is the title of the work. And then research in higher education is the title of the publisher. And then information about volume number 7, 2006. And notice that there are no references to page numbers. I didn't think about that until now. But looking at the side-by-side comparison, you see that there are page numbers under the APA style. And then the access date. Okay, so here are your next steps. Begin drafting the career preparation essay. You should have had enough exposure to the Pike source to be able to understand it. And then convert psychology lingo to English speaking your English essay using this PowerPoint presentation as a guide. Format all citations for MLA to make sure that you understand that you are writing an English-based essay, not a psychology essay. You are just integrating sources from a non-English source into your English-based essay. Reference all indirect citations, whatever Pike cites, using quoted in if you are using a sentence that has a end of the sentence citation in Pike source, so that you accurately report it or you accurately format it in your English-based essay appropriately. Then create the according to statement for Bureau of Labor Statistics. You are not required to create an according to statement, but it might help you to integrate that source. So Bureau of Labor Statistics is worth 30 points in your paper. And then create the works cited page, which is going to be formatted for MLA. Remember, do not mix APA and MLA within your English-based essay. This presentation was for demonstration purposes only.